Hey guys, so I'm a huge gamer and I have been a fan of the Final Fantasy series ever since my teens. It's been my hyper focus as an autistic kid, as a gamer, as someone who was just seeking escapism at the time, and it definitely provided that as well as entertainment. And I've always been drawn to the more complex character building, the worlds, the magic system, the camp, all of that. This was their most recent mainline game, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it. I'll be covering aspects such as gameplay, story, and characters. I will be going into spoilers, so if you still want to experience the game without having it spoiled for you, then don't watch the video. But if you don't mind spoilers or have no interest in playing the game, then by all means proceed. First things first, how does the game play? Well, the combat director has worked on a Devil May Cry game in the past, and a lot of people have compared it to that game. I haven't played it personally, but I believe it's known as an action game. I'm not sure. I will say that Final Fantasy XVI is definitely an action game. I loved the gameplay. I thought that it functioned well. I thought that it had good accessibility options. Anybody who just wants to experience the game for the story and doesn't have as much interest in the combat will enjoy it. I do think there was a lack of variety in the combat, and a lot of it comes from the lack of variety in the enemy design, and that's something that's unusual for the Final Fantasy series because they usually have a lot of enemies, and some of traditional enemies like Tonberries and Cactuars were absent, and the absence was noticeable because of the lack of variety. I loved the battle. That being said, you can only fight a reskinned Corel so many times before it getting redundant. And also, at some point in the game, the mobs just got so repetitive that I just stopped engaging with them in a meaningful way and decided to grind through other means. Speaking of through other means, the side quest, the most contentious part of the game for most people. Again, it brings up a theme of lack of variety. The side quests, they mostly boil down to fetch quests or just go here, fight this, come back. This also plagues the main game quests. There is a lot of just go here, talk to this person, go there, talk to that person. Story-wise, it does make sense, but gameplay-wise, it does not make an interesting experience, and a lot of it happens as a reprieve between main dungeons, and I'm not saying bring back the mini games like other games have done because those are hit and miss, but I am saying there is a way to provide variety without breaking up the monotony of just doing one thing at a time in that way. I'm not the biggest fan of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I will say they did the mini games well. I think that game is a good example of just breaking up the gameplay. Also, Final Fantasy 15 did this, although they did it afterward, which is unfortunate, but being able to play as other characters goes a long way. I think there was a missed opportunity there, especially with how well they did it with the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think it was a bad idea to have just Clive and nobody else for combat. I think there is variety in his skill set with the icon abilities, and there is variety in the combat in the sense of having the icon battles, although they're few and far between. The battles are more spectacle than combat, but that's okay because they each mark a pivotal moment in the story, and those combats are definitely significant, and they felt that way. It was conveyed well through the spectacle of the battle, although I'm not a huge fan of the QuickTime events. Another issue I had was Torgal. I think that putting him on, mapping him to the same buttons as the items was a really bad idea, because oftentimes I would forget that I didn't have his commands active, and I would accidentally use consumable items trying to extend my combos using Torgal's commands. Also, I feel Torgal was really unintuitive. I think that either having him as an AI character or being able to open up a menu to stop the gameplay and give him commands would have maybe been better. So, characters, starting with main boy Clive. He started out strong. I really liked the plot developments with his brother, the way that he felt guilt over accidentally killing him by using Ifrit, and him being in denial initially. I thought that was really interesting. I thought that his emotional journey up to that point was interesting. But then that was all thrown out the window. And Clive really just settled into this very hyper-masculine, basic savior sort of archetype. And I didn't like it. I thought a lot of his dialogue was dry, and the more emotional points, it felt very just hope. I exist to bring light to mankind. It was hard for me to get behind his character. I do like his design, though. I think it's simple, it's effective, it's clean. Not much to say about Clive. Definitely not my favorite protagonist. And from one character that didn't leave much of an impression for me to another that left little to no impression at all, Jill, I think most people would seem to enjoy Clive, but it seems unanimous that Jill is a little less than stellar in terms of her developments. A lot of the times she's just kind of there, and she doesn't really engage in certain moments that she should, because she has the powers of the dominant. She can transform into the summons, but she just chooses to stand behind in certain cutscenes when Clive is having dominant battles. She's not there for the final battle. Another thing I really hated about her, there is a point in the plot where you can choose between her and another character to accompany you for a main quest. And if you choose the other character, which I did because I wanted to know more about the other character, Tarja, and I was kind of annoyed with Jill at that point because of her lack of presence. And when you choose the other character, Jill's just kind of like, okay, see you later. And considering she's the main love interest, I'm just surprised at her lack of reaction, especially because Final Fantasy has had a long history of compatibility mechanics being included and having different dialogue based on different decisions. I don't know if that's in the game, but it really just highlights the lack of reaction in that scene from Jill. I think her design is probably my favorite of the characters. I just think she's really beautiful. I love the muted colors of the character. I love gray hair on characters. They're generally my favorites in terms of aesthetic. And I just like the attire. The other day I was joking with my partner that if we were to pick a more fitting character theme for Jill, I would just replace her background music with the sound of a microwave running, because that felt fitting toward her role in the story. I feel like if you replaced her with the microwave oven, it just would not really impact anything. Sid. I love Sid. I think that he probably has the best setup in terms of the early characters. I think he's charismatic. I think he's charming. I think he's funny. And I can relate to his motivation. He really wants to change the world and wants to see better for the bearers, which is fitting for the plot before the introduction of Ultima. Spoilers, he did. I was sad when he died. He's my second favorite character. He's voiced by the guy that plays the dad in The Witch, which is a huge plus for me. I love his design. He's also very clean and simple. Yeah, I love Sid. What else can you really say? Joshua. I like Joshua. I think that his plot with Ultima was ultimately more interesting than Clive's situation with the Mother Crystals. because Clive was just really jumping from point to point to point without much reflection, without much commentary, just going through the motions and acting big hero man, whereas Joshua was behind the scenes trying to understand what was going on. Um, I like his design. I like his personality. I like the bond between him and Clive. Clive's best moments are with him. What I will say is, I don't understand what caused him to hesitate to reach out to Clive after so long. And I feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities. For example, him almost dying to Ifrit maybe would have been interesting to see him hold on to some sort of grudge, which would have justified why he took so long to reach out to Clive. And that would have helped with the ambiguity of who is this mysterious second dominant of the fire who's walking around. And also Ultima being absorbed into his body and then just showing up later. We never got much emphasis about that, and that really bothered me. I personally would have liked to see maybe him taking Ultima into his body, as well as the resentment with Clive, pushing him to do Ultima's whims and culminating in a climax of a final battle against Joshua instead of Ultima. I think that would have been really cool. So yeah, I like Joshua. I don't really love him. I think that certain parts of his character just fall into place conveniently. But I like what they tried. I like what they ended up with. I like him.
Benedicta. I really liked the character. I thought that she had presence. I thought that she was theatrical. I thought that the scene where she had that quote of how dare she be judged for the way that she was doing things as a woman put in that position. I'm not qualified to speak, but I thought it was really impactful. I thought that she was cunning. I thought that she was just a really good character. It's a shame that, spoilers, it's a shame she dies. Honestly, her character, I feel, having a change of heart and potentially becoming part of the main cast would have been a really cool idea. Aesthetic wise, I love the bob, but I do think that it evokes a certain type of stereotype along with her whimsy and attitude. But there is some subversion to that with her vulnerability later in opening up about it. So yeah, I love Benedicta. I also just wanted to mention I saw the mature rating for the game, and then Benedicta was introduced. And knowing how these tropes work and how the Final Fantasy games are, I was like, they're so going to have her in a scene with a male character getting it on. And like a minute later, this happens, and I'm just like having giggle fits. Lord Kupka. I think that I understand his place in the plot. I think he is basic meathead villain. I think his motivations are incredibly basic. They do have a place here. There's always one. I feel like his character is one-dimensional. I think he serves his role well. I don't care for his design. I think he just looks like big lunk bro. I don't really have much to say about Lord Kupka. Prince Dion, by far my favorite character. Honestly, should have been the main character. His situation with Clive's mom mirrors that of Clive, with her favoring the brother and putting him down. He has much more of a visceral reaction to it and takes matters into his own hands. The moral dilemma he faces definitely resonates. The shocking actions and measures he takes for the greater good, I think, were very interesting. He feels conflicted about it. Also, explicitly gay character having a kiss on screen It's about time. I was really happy to see that in a Final Fantasy game. I like his design. There is a regality to it. It's not. In the past, they've had queer coded characters more explicitly stereotyped, and I'm glad that that was not the case with him. I think they did really well with the character in general. What I will say that I didn't like about him was his partner, but that's not really to do with him. It's more this character exists just to be this person's love interest, and then they go off to some random country to find some girl that I don't remember if she even ever got a name, and then was never seen again. I don't think that that character had any scenes where he wasn't interacting with Dion as a love interest, focusing on their relationship. So that character felt one dimensional, but it's a nitpick. It doesn't drag down the character of Prince Dion. Also, the Bahamut fight was my favorite in the game. You can't beat dragons in space.
Sleipnir. I like Sleipnir. I thought that he was going to be more important than he was. They kept talking about 8 elements for the dominance, and there was so little emphasis on Leviathan that I was almost sure that it was going to be him. Although his name alludes to Norse mythology in connection to Odin, so I should have known. Um, I liked his design. I thought the braid and the swoop was strange but interesting. I liked the way he talked. He was just very whimsical and mysterious. I hated that they didn't really do much with him. Also, the scene where like an army of him just shows up was absolutely hysterical. I loved that scene for the wrong reasons, but
Barnabas, he was there. I thought his motivations were not explained well. We know he somehow opposes free will and has some sort of obsessive devotion to Ultima, but we're not really. It's not really explained properly as to why. There is an allusion to his relationship towards his mom, who's presumably dead, but it's never explained other than some disturbing cutscenes. And his dialogue really just follows that of blah blah blah, free will is not good, blah blah blah, and it mirrors Ultima's dialogue, but I don't think his character was executed well. I liked his battle a lot. um yeah, not much else to say. His design is also there. It's just armored dude. I just realized I finished recording this whole section for the characters, and I forgot to mention the best villain by far, Annabella, Clive and Joshua's mother. That whole first scene in the intro set her up, I thought, to be the main villain, and I was like, this is really interesting. And she has a direct tie to both of the main characters. She's ruthless. There is a classism about her which works well in the narrative with the bearers and the discrimination. Um, I liked how the events toward the end played out, but I think that she should have been more prominent. And although her character really wasn't designed with it in mind, I kind of wish there were a battle because it would have been cathartic, especially because she also has ties to Prince Dion, which furthers my argument. Prince Dion should have been the main character. And honestly, Annabella may be main villain. And that brings us to main baddie Ultima. Strands of consciousness we must sever, blah, blah, blah. I did not understand his plan with Clive at all. I thought maybe with strands of consciousness and love and trust and blah, he was meaning to kill people in Clive's life that were important to him, and there were plenty of opportunities to do so, but it was just never followed up. Hell, the scene with Barnabas where he splits the sea and they fight, and Clive fights with him, and Jill is just there again, doing nothing. He could have gone after her. He had her in captivity. If you want to sever a strand of consciousness, and try to pull this person to your side by breaking their every hope and feeling. I feel like killing their love interest would be a great start. Um, I thought he was dry. I mean, I guess that's what they were going for, so in that aspect they went well. But I didn't like Ultima. I thought he was just base villain, evil, mysterious god collective dude. His design was cool though, I'll give him that. And there were some interesting scenes with him, like when they chopped his head off and he kept spouting in vague evil. And spoilers, the last scene where Clive kills him and Ultima taunts him by saying, congrats, you've earned this dying world. And I thought that was a really interesting and cool exchange. And that was the most interesting that he got in terms of his interactions with other characters. I won't talk much about the myriad side characters because there are so many of them. Um, I'll just rapid fire. Mid, kind of annoying, but I liked her. Gav, kind of annoying, but I liked him. Goots, I hated him. I wish he would have died earlier on because, like, I can't stand him. Karen, best side character by far. Should have been a main character. All the side quests with her are super interesting. Her personality is interesting. I love her design. Older character as protagonist, please. I would enjoy that. She would have been a great fit. Um, I can't recall at the moment any other side characters that are worth mentioning at this point. As far as the story goes, it started off strong with Clive's whole dilemma with being in denial about killing his brother. It was very much what they were trying to go with Final Fantasy 15 when it was Versus 13 with Noctis and Stella, and I'm glad that they brought that back. Um, and the bearers with the discrimination against them, their enslavement, and seeing this world that operates with the exploitation of this marginalized group by the royals and using them as pawns for war. That was really interesting. But then they kind of just threw that out the window in the main quest, I feel, to focus on the Mother Crystals and Ultima. And a lot of the bearer exposition is locked behind side quests, which was disappointing. And I just couldn't get into Clive's whole situation with Ultima. I liked the premise of a god of a dying world moving on to a different one, creating humanity for a specific purpose, and then having them rebel against him. But I feel like I've seen it done before and better. Final Fantasy XII, for example, did a fantastic job with Eukyria and Princess Ashe, in my opinion, in that regard of a god leading someone into a nefarious purpose and having control over them. Although I guess Ultima differs in his intention, but that's what it reminds me of. I wanted to know more about the world before before it ended, before Ultima got to Valisthea. I think that was missing too. Would have provided more of a background for Ultima. I feel like not much was explained for him, and for that reason, I just couldn't relate to him. And as I stated before with Clive, I feel like started off strong and then just kind of devolved into I am main protagonist guy going around saving people. And it got a little boring. Also, post game, let's talk about that. New Game Plus, not worth it. They just add a lot of side bosses, and the level cap is increased, and everything is stronger, but it is ultimately the same experience. If you know what to do in certain battles, you won't get much variety out of it. I think reforging new equipment is cool, but I think just playing the game again with numbers increased is really boring. I don't think that the New Game Plus was a good edition. So yeah, thoughts overall. Characters, a lot of them are great, a lot of them are not great. Gameplay, repetitive but really fun, worth playing. Story, elements of it were great. Um, Overall, it was good but flawed but engaging. I like the game. I recommend it. I think I'd give it a solid 7. But with post game and such, that would drag it down to like a 6. Don't play the don't don't play the in game post game other than DLCs.